So you've spent more than 2 decades across money services, fintech, cross-border payments, and now global workforce compliance at Deel. What originally pulled you into this space, and what kept you in it as the problems became more global and more ambiguous?
Yeah. So what pulled me into the space was simply, fate and destiny. I thought I was going to grow up to be a CFO, and I happened to put Spanish on my resume. And the company that hired me had a company called Dominican Communications Corp, and they had inside of their stores, they had an agency called Pronto Envios, which was focused on sending money to the Dominican Republic. So as their accountant started doing their books, and as we started to understand the business, we started to realize that there was an opportunity for them to get licenses in the United States. And that was back in the mid 90s when in the U.S. there was about 21 licenses at the time. And the rest was one thing just led to another through my networking and just through my preparation.
It seems like it worked out pretty well. Good networking.
It's been a fun ride.
And so, as I said in the cold open, and something you forgot about, but you did write a letter to FinCEN in 2006, so 20 years ago, listing 67 banks by name that had refused to bank money services businesses. 20 years later, you're CCO at Deel. What's been the through line between that letter and where you're at today?
Yeah, I mean, I think the main through line is about financial inclusion. If you look throughout my career, I've worked with companies that have provided financial inclusion to the global world, right? And the one thing that's special about Deel and that's different is that it takes financial inclusion to another level, both providing financial services as well as economic opportunities, giving talented people the opportunity to work no matter where they are in the world. And indirectly, maybe that hurts the remittance industry a little bit.
I fully agree. And so you also mentioned, so you told me like you were an accountant, so you're CPA, CAMS, CIPPE, CIPPM. It's a lot of different credentials for a single person that aren't like they're all related, but oftentimes people have one or the other. What's the history of that? Was that intentional? Was there a specific moment you realized you needed another one? And how do you go from that, accountant background into fully go to BSA, ML, and compliance?
Sure. So I think I'm a realist, and I think there's a true reality about credential bias, right? And I've experienced it with my CPA. So how do you show that you have some sort of knowledge, right, around the topic? And the reason why I kind of started with all of those was out of necessity. If you also ask me like 10 words to describe myself, number 2 will always be a learner. So I love to learn, and I think being a compliance officer is about learning, and being a chief compliance officer, there's many compliance domains that you have to have knowledge about. And once I realized I wasn't going to be a CFO, but I wanted to be a chief compliance officer, I felt that those were necessary competencies for me to have to bring value to the companies that I worked for.
Yeah, and so you have those competencies, obviously, but I think like as you grow into the levels of compliance, you realize more and more that it's a really strategic leadership role as well. That's not just about compliance and financial crime, but about the business in general and like financial stability and whatnot. When did you realize that it was a strategic leadership role more than just a support function for the business?
Yeah, so I think I always had that attitude because of the fact that as a CPA, you're an advisor to the business, right? And compliance enables business, whether people like it or not. But if you really kind of look at the companies that have been successful in financial services, many of them lead with compliance and have a compliance-led strategy. So for me, it was kind of always in my blood. I look at myself more as a businessman, right? My job is to enable the business to be successful within the regulatory regimes that we operate in.
Cool, love it. I'm going to go back a little bit further into your whole career, just to like give everyone an idea. You were at JPMorgan, you went to remittance businesses, AFEX, Inter, Corpay, now Deel. But you did go in the mid-2000s RIA CES, and you were running compliance for one of the world's largest privately owned money transfers company. So it's 40, at the time, it was 40,000 agent locations, 85 countries, which back in the mid-2000s was a lot of scale and a lot of global footprint, which seems like you went back to today at Deel. But what did running compliance at that scale at the time teach you that you still use today at Deel?
Yeah, I think the main thing that it taught me is that you have to have a decentralized control, right? So as the compliance officer of a global business, you have other compliance officers who have responsibilities for your licenses around the world. So you build teams around those people and the strengths of those people, and you give them 51% of the vote. My job as a chief compliance officer is to provide them the principles and guidelines to comply with the regulations that they need to comply with locally. So you have, overarching ideas that you provide to them, and you give them the tools. And my job as the chief compliance officer, my joke is when somebody says, "Hey, well, what do you do for a living?" I said, "Oh, that's kind of a little hard question, right? My job mainly is to make sure that the people who are on my team are successful."
Yeah, no, 100%. When people make successful career moves, it always feels logical in hindsight, oh, that idea seemed easy. Of course, I should have done that 20 years ago. And you did go through a lot of really good companies. I mean, AFEX, Inter, Corpay, as I said, now Deel. Maybe those weren't as logical the moment you made those just choices and moved to these companies. Which move made the least sense to outsiders but made a lot of sense to you?
Yeah, I don't think it'll be one that you kind of find on my resume, but for one that you actually find on my resume. So I'll just fill that in, right?
Good.
I actually left my professional career to start a personal training business in the late 90s, and then I met my wonderful wife, who I've been married to 27 years, and
Wow.
together 30 years this September, and realized that I couldn't envision myself having a family as a personal trainer. So I actually went back to the same position that I left, and that really taught me a lot of things from the perspective of how to deal with people, how to sell, and those interpersonal skills that I learned as a personal trainer. I use them every day in managing people and in basically motivating, influencing, and sometimes getting people to do things that they don't really want to do, but it's for everybody's good.
It's funny. It's interesting. I've talked to a lot of people in compliance, and a lot of them have had similar, few months, years of doing something completely different. I've had someone have their own wine farm, and someone creates supplements, which I guess is kind of related with the personal training. So I maybe should dig into that a little bit more. I don't have that right now, at least. Which one was the hardest? Which one had the most amount of work, novelty to it when moving into the role that you didn't necessarily expect?
So I think each one of those roles was kind of a natural progression, right? In my career, I think the one that was I'd say my current position. Right, it's kind of taking me back 20 years, and the pace that we work at is just a different level, and I've always believed that speed was important, and now I could really see that speed does create advantage.
For sure. And so I want to go into what becoming a CCO actually looks like. I mean, when judgment actually becomes the job. So as we said, early in the career, you engage directly with the regulators, whether it's like the FinCEN letter you wrote on MSB banking access, but whether it's that or other events that you've had later on, what did this teach you about the gap between the regulation and the reality? Which I feel like the higher you get up into the ladder, the more you realize that actually there's a big gap between what is the regulation, what FinCEN says, and what's actually happening on the front lines.
Well, I think, the biggest thing is growing up in my career in the money service business, right? There was always lack of direction, or you're in a unregulated environment in some places, regulated environment in other places. There was a lot of always ambiguity in what, how do you build a program, right? And I think you just take clues, right? One of the things that I would always say is that we want to have a program that looks like a banking program with the flexibility of a money service business, right? So meaning that you create a little bit of complexity, so that way in places where you have to be competitively where competition really drives level of compliance, right? Because if you don't if you don't meet the requirements that the market has, even though you're in another place that has higher standards, you need to still meet those standards. So I think flexibility, adaptability are all very important when you're building out a program like that.
And how do you build credibility with like the regulators, the executives, the boards, and how long does it actually take? Because I mean, especially when you're going into compliance that's so international, as you've been doing quite a bit actually over the years, right? Like most services that you worked were international businesses with international compliance needs.
That's right.
I mean, as a vendor, I would do work with quite a few of these companies, and I do understand like the complexities of it. So how do you create credibility there, and how do you build a team that's actually able to handle all these different nuances?
Yeah. So I mean, credibility is built over time, right? You do what you say you're going to do, and you deliver on that. How do you build credibility along the way? Early in my career, I went to a lot of conferences, right? I started going to ACAMS conferences before it was ACAMS, right? When it was moneylaundering.com was the name of
I didn't even know that was the name of it.
name of the conference, right? So, I always believed in the power of like networking, right? So
And that's where we met. So
you build credibility through like meeting people, getting to know who they are, sharing ideas, seeing how you could help each other, right? When there isn't a need, so you're giving to the community. And I think with regulators, you have to have proactive like regulatory outreach, right? Like in the U.S., there's a Money Transmitter Regulators Association meeting, right? Those are important meetings to go and show up to, right? Where are your regulators going to be, right? For the bankers, the ABA, right? Showing up and back in those days, truth of the matter is, I was probably one of the only MSBs that wasn't a household name. So it wasn't Western Union, wasn't MoneyGram, wasn't American Express, right? So you build credibility by, making yourself part of the crowd and having people get to know you, and showing them that you are the brand, right? Like I am Deel. Deel is me, right? And I have to build my professional credibility, and you be consistent throughout your career and deliver on what you say you're going to do.
So super interesting about that credibility, but now another word that sounds the same is liability, and you mentioned the personal aspect of it. I was recently in the UK, and something that I learned as well is that in the UK the MLRO role has this person has actually the liability as a compliance officer of any fine issue, regulatory downfall that might come of the program. It goes on to a liable, like a personal liable risk instead of a company one. And so the personal liability of a CCO has become much louder conversation, right? The SEC has been settling cases against individual CCOs, and there's an active debate about whether that's pushing good people out of the role. What do you think about that risk personally?
Never worries me 1 minute. Never lose a second
Good.
of sleep over personal liability. I think it's something that the regulators probably have not used enough in the history of enforcement. The people who I've seen that have had personal liability applied to them, when you really read the cases, they were being willfully negligent, and so it's not something that I really ever worry about, because I know my principles, and I know that the people that I work for have always been people that want to do the right thing all of the time and choose the right thing over the wrong thing. So it's always been very easy for me, but I could see how personal liability can be an issue if you don't have the right support from the people that you work for.
And so I'm super curious about something. The past year, and especially the past 6 months, probably have been insane in terms of how AI has been implemented across businesses. And I'm sure especially at Deel, which is such a forward-thinking company, this issue of personal liability does seem like it has its limits, especially with the implementation of AI. So before, systems would generate alerts, generate cases, pull data, but they wouldn't actually make decisions. And although today there's still a big human in the loop component, we can expect that in a few months, years, or whatever the timeline might be, this AI internally is going to start making decisions. How do you think that's going to change the personal liability aspect of it? Do you think that regulators are actually going to change the way this liability is set, and then it could be given to this vendor or this AI, this third-party AI, or is it going to be kept on the individual or now on the organization? How do you think that's going to change the landscape?
Yeah, so I think the key thing that regulators want is, I'll put it very grossly, they want a throat to choke,
Yeah.
right? And a throat to choke is never going to change, no matter how much technology you put on something in a regulated environment, right? So I think that you hear about the one-man shop and that AI, and you could create billion-dollar companies with agents, and I really believe that's true, and that's potentially a future of a lot of how businesses. We're going to have a lot of small, potentially businesses of people with a lot of good ideas. But I think in the regulated environment, you're always going to have people that have to be accountable. There has to be a human, and you hear human in the loop. I really think about it's always human at the end. No matter how much AI that you use, you're making the decision on which one of those workflows are low risk, high risk, which one of those you're going to allow to make those automated decisions, and also you're going to have a quality assurance, right? Yep. You're going to have I'm an accountant, right? So auditing, you're going to constantly be auditing the agents, and I just think about that being as people, right? Yeah. Like agents, if you personify them, you're going to need to manage them just like you manage people.
But do you think that there's a point at which there's this vendor that's actually vendors that are selling AI or whatnot at which Deel might be outsourcing some AI capabilities to some people? Do you think that's possible that liability is going to be put on this vendor as well?
You've never been able to outsource your liability. Maybe through insurance and things like that. You see Amex coming out with their new product that they're going to insure all agentic agents or purchases on their system, right? I think you'll maybe be able to build some kind of insurance around some of those things, but at the end of the day, accountability and responsibility is going to remain, whose company it is. So there's always going to be a human somewhere, I believe, that's going to be, that throat to choke.
There's got to be a throat to choke.
There's got to be a throat to choke.
All right. Well, maybe it's going to be mine one day. Who knows? So Deel went from 800 million runway to like they've got now $17 billion valuation in just a couple of years. And you've been there for how long? A year and a half?
I've been here for 14 months.
14 months. So just under a year and a half. And in that little amount of time for a startup, you've grown probably tripled in valuation, maybe.
I don't know about valuation, but we've grown quite a bit in revenue.
At least in terms of runway, it seems like you probably at least doubled. It's especially interesting because one of the mottos of Deel is like being global from day one, right? What does compliance mean at that growth rate? You're onboarding thousands of businesses across dozens, if not maybe hundreds of jurisdictions in the world, having an insane amount of people under that as well that you have to do compliance for. What does that process look like as the company scales, exponentially?
Yeah, I think the what makes it easy is the products that we offer, right? So I'm an accountant by training, as I said. I started my career in payroll, basically. Like as a junior accountant in a small accounting firm, you know what you do? A lot of payroll.
A lot of payroll.
On those 16 column sheets, you've probably never seen one in your life.
Without a computer before.
Without a computer.
Excel files, right?
Without Excel files. So I was excited about Excel when it came out.
You were like the guy in the movie The Accountant, right?
a little bit. I wish I was that cool.
A little bit more chill, but
I wish I had that many skills.
He had many
other skills, but I think it's, like payroll in its sense is about compliance at the end of the day, right? So it's part of the DNA at Deel, and this like building fast and having compliance don't need to be two things that can't happen together. Right. So I think it's mindset about understanding like what you're offering and building that into the product and everything that you do.
But even so, how do you manage such fragmented regulations across so many regions? I mean, is it a matter of like having to have quite a bit of people that have knowledge about these different...
I mean the amount of people that do compliance at Deel is it's a big number. It's quite substantial. I don't know the exact number, but there's a lot of people doing compliance on a day-to-day basis, and it's a culture of compliance.
Because Payroll Org, they surveyed global payroll professionals last year, and they said that 57% said local compliance was their single biggest challenge. Any challenges at those payroll companies, bigger than vendor management, bigger than automation. Does that match what do you see?
Yeah, that's the complexity of doing local payroll, and I think it's also one of the things that gives Deel an advantage is that we build local payroll engines.
Oh, that's very impressive, especially at that speed. Now, on another side of compliance, I guess, worker misclassification is a headline of EOR risk. Glovo got fined nearly 80 million euros in Spain. Uber settled $20 million. FedEx for over $240 million. How do you build a model that scales globally without creating those misclassification time bombs?
Yeah, I think the EOR industry around the world is much like the MSB industry when I first got into it. It's not completely defined in every jurisdiction. So you go in with best practices. You have a policy team, and you're doing private-public partnerships to show like that the interest of Deel is also the interest of the local government. Like we're there to help create jobs and bring economic opportunity to the country, and I think what always works with government officials is transparency, partnership, and collaboration. So you sit with those three principles. You build credibility and trust, and that's how you manage a global workforce and regulations that can be ambiguous.
Now, I want to scope out of compliance, and I'm just generally interested. I'm a founder. There's a lot of founders. AI has reduced the strength or the thickness at least of the boundaries globally and are allowing us to move faster, which we are. Like, I mean, we're operating in dozens of countries today and we're still a relatively small company. From your understanding, and again, not talking specifically about compliance, but rather as operating globally, what do you think founders consistently underestimate about operating globally, especially from day one?
Cultural competency. That what your home country, you tend to have some conscious bias about how the world works, and you think everybody lives the same life that you do, and that's especially very American. We think we're the center of
Of the world.
of the world, and we could talk all about that and debate about that for a long time, but just leave it at that. And I think that many founders lack like the idea of cultural competency and the fact that just because your product works in this country, it's not necessarily going to work in the same way in this country, and you learn like different things. My best example of this, and this might not be like very precise, would be when I first started doing business in Indonesia, right? And not understanding the complexities of their language, and that they have, let's say, 7 different words that say yes but mean no, right? So, you walk away from a lot of meetings thinking that you have alignment, and then you come back and 2 weeks later, they really were saying yes because they were being polite, but they were saying no because you really didn't have that alignment, right? So I think those assumptions and going deeper into the cultural competency piece of whatever country you're operating.
Has there been a country that was really, for you, difficult to get into? I mean, whether it's a Deel or another of the companies you worked in globally, has there been a country for you that's been more complicated, whether it's by regulations? So I know I've talked to a lot of people where Germany is very tough to get into in terms of like how they do regulations. Apparently you need to talk to someone on the phone when doing the IDV part of the onboarding, which is to me actually wild. Or whether it's culturally speaking, has there been like really a region where like, wow, this has been harder than expected for reasons that were maybe unexpected?
I think, look, when you go through licensing processes throughout the world, you realize that there's just some places that are very difficult to get licenses, right? And when you're trying to expand in a global market, like I always, never been successful in getting a license in India, never been successful in getting a license in China. Basically everywhere else that I've been, yes, they may have been difficulties, but they work with you, and you just have to meet their standards and really prove that you're there to help the country with whatever service that you're going in. And I think when you're operating globally, it's smart to align with countries. They all have business development units that are like pseudo-governmental agencies that are there to promote business for the country, and utilizing them to help you tell your story as you're entering companies helps globally.
Compliance is often seen as slowing things down. We come across that quite a bit, especially because we, for instance, at Sphinx, we're the two sides of the coin. We talk a lot to ops and we talk a lot to compliance, and oftentimes ops want to find ways to make compliance go faster, and compliance are more focused on like the regulatory aspect of it. Where have you seen it actually enable growth? Where have you seen compliance really be a driver instead of a bottleneck to growth for the business?
Yeah, I mean, I think that compliance is always the enabler.
Good.
Like I never think that we're slowing things down.
You're a good chief compliance officer.
It's like my job is to never say no.
Yeah.
My job is to say we could do this if, right? And my job is to make sure everybody understands the risks that we're taking, and making sure everybody is comfortable like with those risks, so everybody's on the same page, right? So it's compliance by by design, right? From having at the table strategically helping the business leaders understand what potentially, the pitfalls are, and when you're moving fast, are we willing to take that risk? And sometimes you make the business decision that you're willing to take that risk, but you're not willing to take that risk. So you're going to put effort, and I think it's trying to add friction at agreeable points.
It's interesting because I had last time we had the podcast in this studio, it was with Nick Passarelli, who's the CCO of Melio. And I was asking him a similar question about like risk and how do you take risk. And sometimes, there's it's gray. It's not all the time black and white. His answer was you always start with a yes and then work back into understanding why it's a no, or it might be a no. Do you have the same perspective on how you go about risk, or is it different in the way you actually assess something as risky?
Yeah, I think it's understanding what the business wants to do and showing them how to do it. Not necessarily I never say, I try never to say no. Like at the end of the day, I want the business to say no. I want them to make the decision, right? It's not, probably early in my career, right? Mistakes I made as a compliance officer was thinking that the compliance decisions were actually my responsibility to make. And now, as I have matured in my career, I've realized that it is an advisory role, and I have to have my boundaries on, my lines, but that creates credibility, right? When you're helping the business and you're constantly helping them, the times that when you have to say no, they pay attention.
I love it. You just say in a Corpay interview at the time you were in Corpay, you said that fostering a culture of risk and compliance where feedback is actively sought is what proactively builds strong mitigants. I did do a lot of research to find that.
You did?
Yeah.
I'm impressed.
How do you create that culture in practice, though? Because, again, I'm a startup founder. Of course, we're a compliance company, so we're very worried about compliance and security and all of those aspects of the business. But for a lot of companies that might be fintech or whatever else that are focused, as a founder, more about growth than something else. How do you actually build that culture and embed it into the company so that the desire of growth doesn't overpower the one of staying compliant?
Yeah, I think perfection, right? A lot of people in compliance, try to achieve perfection, and as soon as you accept that, no matter what program that you build, it'll never be perfect, and you can be effectively compliant, right? So you need to create a learning organization, right? An organization where there is safety in making the mistakes, so people will bring those mistakes up quickly and then moving quickly to resolve those mistakes depending on the criticality of it. So, I think it's all about mindset that you need to walk into, and I think the compliance officer helps to set that tone. If every time something goes wrong, I have a lot of drama, that's not good for the business. It's just a distraction, right? You need to accept that, as long as somebody's not doing something willfully, then it's not a big deal. Right? Mistakes are going to happen. You're never going to be perfect. And the feedback is get feedback from all levels, because the people that are out there, doing the work, they see the risks, and if they're not scared to bring up or think, there's going to be some backlash on them, and you just, stay focused on the solution, then I think that's what creates the, a culture of compliance, and it creates a learning organization, and it minimizes how long certain controls stay maybe unmitigated.
If you can tell us, what's the most expensive no you've ever issued? And was it worth it?
What's the most expensive? No.
And not to your wife or your children, right?
That I ever issued.
That would be easier.
You know, I don't look like I just try to learn from my nose, but you know, there's definitely been times early in my career where I overweighted reputational risk. And I made a decision based on, you know, like this could hurt our reputation. And I think as time has gone on, reputational risk matters differently for different companies.
Yep.
Right. So with reputation, you know, size matters, and being an MSB, right? Like when you're a small company, you're in a de-risking environment, your reputation is super important. So you want to be extra careful on what type of reputational risk that you take.
Yep, I agree. I mean, for us, it's very important, right? As a small compliance startup,
Yeah,
if
I mean,
we
you know, it's like a glass of water, right?
Oh,
Your
that's
reputation's like a glass of water. Once you spill it, you can never get all that water back into
that
your,
is 100%. And for
into your
us,
cup.
you know, we've seen the scandal with Dell recently. This compliance company in SOC 2 and those regulations, and it's very hard. Like once you've got like those reputational issues on your ass, if I could say so, especially as a company in compliance and security and whatnot, getting that back is trials and tribulations. Maybe more than like an MSB or whatever other company that might be. Sweet. Now I want to dive a little into the product controls and decision making, because you definitely have to make a lot of those decisions, especially when looking into risk problems. How do you decide whether the answer is going to be policy, process, product, data, or human judgment, especially at scale when you get so many of those risk problems on your desk?
I think you know, when you look at the decisions, right? I more think about it: is it a one-way door or is it a two-way door? One-way doors, I take a lot more deliberation about, you know, what the decision that I'm going to make, right? Because I can't walk back through it. A two-way door, I make a quick decision because I know if I make a mistake on that decision, it's quickly fixed. So. Be it policy, process, people, right? I think in the facts and circumstances of the situation and the risk will show you like where you may want where you can apply, you know, to mitigate that risk. And sometimes it's over all of them, and then sometimes it's just, you know, like you don't want it to be a paper tiger. So it's like just dealing with it in policy usually doesn't really mitigate the risk, right? So it has to always be a little bit of policy and one of those other factors.
Cool, love it. How many metrics are you following? And in a sense, like, is there metrics that tells you, okay, this control is actually working and it's just not existing? Because you know, the FinCEN you definitely saw, but FinCEN recently changed a few things, and for the longest time, you needed to have a compliance program. But now you don't only need to have it, you need to make sure that it's actually working, which is two very different things. What are some of the metrics that you're following internally to verify that controls are actually working?
Yeah, I think it's, you know, maybe a little bit less on you know, metrics will give you trends and give you sort of a pulse on what's happening, right? And it'll kind of give you like if something changes from a month, like that's pretty drastic, right? You could see like a change and go ask a question. But I think where really the rubber hits the road is on your testing program, on your team that's going out and testing, you know, the controls that you think are critical in your processes. And, you know, there's lots of that happening from your different SOC type of audits that you have to do, plus your own internal compliance team, plus automated testing that you put in, and then when it comes to financial crime compliance, right? Your independent review on a yearly basis is really the scorecard, right? How did that come up? How many high risk, issues that you had? And the last thing that I want, frankly, is a clean report, because like in my experience, there's always something.
There's always something.
There's always something that you need to improve.
I agree. I grew up. I have a very Ashkenazi Jewish mom, and it's like if it's good, it's never good enough. There's no way. I've never had a moment. I remember taking tests back home and having like a 19 out of 20 French system. It's never enough. And if I told her everything was fine, she'd be like, "You're lying, right?" And I do the exact same thing with my company. Anytime someone tells me it's all good, I've got "you're lying. Tell me what's wrong." And there's always something, that you gotta dig a little bit deeper to find and to make it better.
There is.
All right, now I got to talk about what's everyone's talking about today is AI. We have to talk about AI. Wouldn't be a good podcast without talking about AI. And everyone is talking about AI and compliance. And I mean, like, we are a company doing AI compliance. You are probably seeing it the most, as I said, extremely global company. A whole bunch of systems that you have to orchestrate, a whole bunch of risk thresholds that you have to manage, thousands of companies that you're onboarding from all over the world. And you're probably also talking to so many vendors that I can't even put it on the fingers of two hands. What's real today and what's noise?
I think it's all real.
It's all real.
I think it's all super real. It's just how fast adoption is going to happen, and how it's going to happen. I mean, I truly feel that like I can. Like AI can do my job except for the human things that
those human things
that it needs me interacting with a regulator, interacting with a banker. That the face, the throat to choke.
The throat to choke. You have to be the one.
I have to be the. I have to be the one.
You have a good throat to choke, I gotta say. Today at Deel, where is AI already improving your compliance operations?
Yeah. So I think it's already improving our compliance operations in helping us in efficiencies. It's helping us, we've tried to keep it very, very simple at the present time. I think a lot of like the improvements that like people are talking about aren't necessarily AI, where you don't really need to like use a lot of tokens to, like really do it. I think it just has opened up the eyes of taking a different approach to workflows, right? Mm-hmm. We've grown up building systems that are human-centric, and I think now you have the ability to have machine-centric workflows with humans at the end, and making, taking the accountability for the decisions that have to make. So, frankly, I'm trying to automate every single like workflow that I have. I want to triage my email. I want to have, just send it to an agent. There's an email that has to export control. I have created a specialized agent for export control, grounded on my internal policies and procedures, grounded on the regulation. Analyze the problem. Give me a summary. Let me, look at it, read it, make sure I understand it. Do I want more? Do I want to go look at more? Or is it good enough? And I think those are like, the human things are going to happen. And I think, frankly, I've said it for like a while in different, forums, is that, the compliance person of the future is a technologist, somebody that understands, engineering, systems thinking, right? Like what I need to do to upskill is like learn how to think like an engineer.
Yeah, I agree. And, there's definitely a hype right now of building everything in-house. Claude has made it incredibly simple to get from zero to MVP very fast and to actually get results also very fast, which is actually incredible, scary. But in terms of business, it's fantastic. What do you think should be built in-house? What do you think should be outsourced? How are you thinking about those decisions internally right now?
Yeah. So I think that it's different thinking for Deel than it is a traditional like financial services company. So I'm going to speak more like generally in that sense. What do you want me to say? I lost track of my thoughts.
No, I was wondering about the build or buy basically right now.
Yeah. Okay. So what do you want? What do you want to build? What do you want to buy? Right. I think building's easy. Right. I think it's it's easy to build. Right. It's like
Hard to maintain.
hard to maintain. Right. So what I would I would do if I was a traditional firm that didn't have the talent that I have at Deel as it pertains to engineers and product, right? Like Deel's unique in the sense of anywhere else that I have been because I have product and engineers that are part of my team, right? Which is different. There's not many other traditional companies, or there's not traditional companies that have that, right? You're fighting for resources in engineering and product, and then the worry part if you're at a traditional firm is how are those engineers and product going to maintain, right? So I think you build the stuff that's like what I would say easy, what AI does like well, right? And it's not even AI a lot of times. It's just advanced automation, right? Go gather the information you have internally, right? Bring it back. Like then you apply the generative AI to give your analyst a summary. Go out and do your open source, right? And different places you probably want to have specialized agents to do different things on the web to bring that all back. I think those are things that are easier and aren't models and are explainable and easy to show regulators from a governance. When you kind of get to maintaining a complex like reasoning model and you need data scientists and all the slew of talent behind that to keep that model going, that's probably specialized models people should probably buy, and you have to be honest with what your internal talent is.
Yeah, love it. How do you think about explainability and auditability in AI systems? It's obviously AI does a lot of good, but sometimes it hallucinates. Sometimes it's gonna make decisions that look compliant but are actually wrong. How do you think about auditability? How do you think about explainability? How do you think about the escalation paths that need to happen internally for that to be resolved and go right at the end of the day?
Yeah, I think that's the foundation. You can't even like think about using AI if you haven't thought about those governance pieces of it. So, compliance by design and AI is a good place to start there, right? And once again, it's just explainability is about auditability, right? And I kind of was thinking about it, and it's funny, right? When you have a human, you don't necessarily ask them how they got to their conclusion, right? You just accept their conclusion. You don't say, hey, how many websites did you go to it's not that, in most cases, not that well documented that I, did 10 searches, got, little information, but AI, you'll actually see, right? Those 10 searches, you'll see what it brought in to actually, make that decision. And so if you can't, if I would say a third grader can't understand what the AI did, then it's not to the standard that you need it to be.
100%. As I'm curious, you mentioned your team, you're a technologist now, and that's the future of compliance and people that you're hiring, and we talked a lot about AI, and you can build it all in-house. If you're building your compliance team from scratch today, who's your first hire?
An engineer.
An engineer
An engineer.
with compliance background, or does it matter?
I could. So the first transaction monitoring system, or maybe the second that I built, what I did was hire a programmer, somebody who understand. This was an access database, just to go back, right? Because at the time, Excel couldn't handle more than, like, it didn't even handle like 1 million records. So you needed to use an access database, which actually works pretty good if you know how to do it. And I had a programmer that understood, how to build access databases, work with me for a year. I taught him compliance, and then I let him loose to build, to build a system.
Love it.
So you could teach. Engineers are smart guys. They read, and why I love working with engineers is because they read and ask really good questions. Sometimes questions that I even maybe haven't thought about. So I love the first principles thinking, right? Yeah. Is that you could have at this point.
I mean, that's why our team is mostly engineers. And it's working out. Even our go-to-market people are engineers. Our compliance people, some of them have been engineers before. So, and some of them weren't and now are becoming engineers. So everyone has engineering capabilities, which is wild to think.
And then probably second after engineers would be somebody who doesn't want, like, studied law but doesn't want to be a lawyer.
Interesting.
Not because they tend to be good compliance people. And then accountants, because, the audit skill, the curiosity that comes with being an auditor.
Good with numbers, good with words, good with first principles, the 3 first hires.
Yeah.
Looks pretty much right. Now I want to look into the future of compliance. 5 years from now, do you think the EOR and global workforce category will be regulated as financial services, as employment services, or as something genuinely new?
No idea. Regulation always evolves. But honestly, it's not something that I've actually thought about.
Interesting. What do you think will still require? I mean, we talked about human judgment, but say 5 years from now, what do you think still requires human judgment in 2030 when we maybe reach AGI, where decision making has been offset to our AI agents? Is it human level? Is it building the programs? Where is the human aspect of compliance still going to be true, basically forever, hopefully?
I mean, it just goes back to who's accountable, right? Like who created that system that has AGI, right? And the argument is that if you have AGI, it's smarter than me. Right. So, like, do you really need me? Where you need me is to make sure that the system that was built is working the way that you thought it should work, and and that's like continuous auditing of the system. So humans will always, I think, be needed for that piece of it, and maybe by, like, as agents take like that away, agents you'll start getting paid for the productivity that the agents that replaced you are created, right? Like maybe there's some crazy idea where if I build a system of agents and companies like using my agents, and I'm responsible for testing them, that whatever productivity they're paying me while I'm on the beach in Puerto Rico, sipping some coconut water.
That's going to be a good feature for you.
There'll be job boards where agents will actually be hiring humans.
Oh, that's for sure. And there will be job boards where agents are hiring other agents.
I think they already exist.
That's probably already existing.
I think there's one or two probably already exist.
Oh, future is crazy. So we've talked a lot about compliance, a lot about AI, a lot about the job, but now I want to go into the person behind the role.
Cool.
What part of being a CCO do people underestimate, especially like emotionally speaking? Because you do handle with people, which isn't, as a CEO, it's not always the easiest. There's a lot of things coming at you from working with a lot of people, especially, and then regulation, and then you're working with product and engineering, and then the growth aspect of the business. So what do you think people really underestimate?
Yeah, I mean, I think the cognitive load that a compliance officer goes through on a daily basis, right? We talked about like how many decisions that you have to make, the domains, right? That you have to have a broad breadth of knowledge and many little things, right? Enough to make yourself dangerous, I like to say, right? You have to have good working knowledge, and what you don't know, you make up through curiosity. Like as a CPA, the best lesson that I ever learned in my career is that my boss told me never give the client the answer, even if you know it. Tell them that you will get back to them with the right answer, because even if you know it, you want to double check to make sure that there's nothing else, that there's not a better answer to make. So you don't need to know everything. You just need to know how to find the right answers at the right time.
After 20 years in compliance, how has this work shaped how you think about trust in general?
I mean, I think that my principle has never changed.
Good.
You give trust, and then people deteriorate it from it.
I love that. And so about giving things, you serve on advisory boards, Henry Seeley College, ACAM is Manchester CF. What is it? What is that giving back layer of the work? I mean, why is that giving back layer of the work so important for you?
Yeah. So, starting with Operation Warrior Shield, right? My father was a veteran, and so this opportunity was about kind of honoring him, as well as the fact that I truly believe in the power of meditation and breath work, and so a great friend of mine gave me the opportunity to join this advisory board that helps first responders, deal with PTSD by giving away dogs and teaching transcendental meditation. ACAMS, when I became an advisory board member, my role was to be the voice for the money service business and to fight the de-risking fight at that time, which led to the letter in 2006 that I didn't even
And now you remember.
that I didn't even remember.
You should find that letter somewhere. Frame it in your office.
I need to go look for that one. So that was about being a voice for the industry and giving, fighting for the industry to be banked and to address the de-risking issue at a global level, which I think with the help of other ACAMS board members, specifically, John Byrne took that fight on very well, and it's really led to the place that I think money services businesses have earned in the financial industry. They're becoming systemic institutions, and they are the future of our financial world, no doubt in my mind.
Love it. We're going to end this with a couple of rapid fire questions, one word, one sentence here and there,
Okay.
and then we're done.
Cool. Tim Ferriss.
Tim Ferriss.
Nice. I love him.
One word that defines great compliance leadership.
Positivity.
Most overrated compliance trend right now.
Personal liability.
Most underrated control that actually works.
Callback.
Skill future compliance leaders will need most.
Orchestration.
One metric senior executives should pay more attention to.
One metric senior investors should pay more attention to. I don't know if there's one.
There's multiple.
There's multiple. Listen to your compliance people.
Right on. Biggest mistake founders make with compliance.
Don't use it as an enabler. See it as a cost center, not as the revenue preservation department.
Right on. That's what I tell people all the time. But it's good that you have it on screen. I'll just show the extract of you saying it. One compliance task you'd automate tomorrow.
I'm trying to automate them all.
Everything, I know. What's a red flag you instantly spot in a scaling company?
If they look perfect.
And my mom would be proud of you saying that. One hill you'll always die on in compliance.
I don't think there's any hill that you need to die on. Doing the right thing.
Flat
you
net.
just do the right thing. Simple.
Best advice you've ever got from a regulator.
You never get in trouble for not filing SAR.
That's
You never get in trouble for filing a SAR. You only get in trouble when you should have filed the SAR.
I should tell the companies we work with on filing SARs. It'll make me a bit more money. What's the one AI tool you actually use in your day-to-day?
I use them all. I use for different purposes. I use Claude. I use ChatGPT. I use Gemini, and they all have a purpose in my day.
Now all of their stocks are going to go up right after this.
I wish.
First job in compliance you'd give your younger self.
First job in compliance I'd give my younger self.
Keep it to where it was? Something else?
I think like the investigations, learning how to do investigations has been like a great accelerator in my career, and being having the privilege of being trained by a guy by the name of Mike McDonald from IRS CI. I think learning how to follow the money, like that was the job that fell in my lap in a sense because of the El Dorado Task Force, and something that they did a geographical targeting order in Jackson Heights in the mid-90s.
Cool. And if you weren't doing this, what would you be doing?
If I wasn't doing this, what would I be doing?
Sipping a coconut in Puerto Rico?
I would be, if I don't. That's a question I've never really, thought about. But is it like because I'm independently wealthy? It's like what. I mean, I feel very fortunate because my career very much resembles my personality, and I have never I've been fortunate to work for great companies and great founders, and have been fortunate to build my whole career. And so there's never been like a moment in my career where I really thought I wanted to do like something else. Just not like in my character. My character's more like I just want to be the best at what I'm doing. Period.
Love it. And is there anyone else we should have on the podcast next time?
What do you want to talk about?
Keep on compliance, risk, ops, startups, fintechs.
I could give you a ton of names of elders that will give you a lot of edification.
We'll get that afterwards.
I think you should stick with the elders in the industry, because what's old is new, or what's new is old.
Right on.
It's just a different name, but the principles are all the same.
Love it. Well, Anthony, it was a pleasure having you on the podcast.
Thank you
so much for joining.
Love it.
And we'll speak soon.
Yeah, thank you.